Did you know that a motorcycle once helped the US Army win World War I by being so light and reliable it practically ran on hopes and dreams? Ladies and gentlemen, you know my neighbor Bob? The one who claims he invented Bluetooth because he once tangled two coat hangers and heard music in his teeth? Yeah, well, even Bob would have struggled to mess up a Cleveland A2 lightweight. Because this thing was so mechanically simple, so minimalist, I believe if you sneezed hard enough near it, it might just start running. This is Timmy, and welcome back to Timmy Tiny Wheels, the only YouTube channel where vintage motorcycles get more screen time than my ex's cooking disasters. If you love machines that go brap instead of bling, hit that subscribe button right now. It's cheaper than Bob's online seminar, How to Fix Your Life with Duct Tape. Let's ride! Now, the Cleveland A2 Lightweight, made in Cleveland, Ohio, back when people named cities after themselves and didn't need 12 apps to buy a wrench. This was the first proper production model from Cleveland Motorcycle Manufacturing Co., founded in 1915 by George N. Adams and Charles A. Mueller. And here's a wild idea for you. It was built during World War I, not to impress influencers, but to get soldiers and postal workers from A to B without the engine falling off. The mastermind behind it? Karl Neracher. But wait, it gets better. The crankshaft was mounted longitudinally and power got twisted around 90 degrees, using a worm gear. A man who apparently thought, what if we build a motorcycle engine with only 3 moving parts? That's right. The early Cleveland A2 came with a 221 cubic centimeters, single-cylinder, 2-stroke, air-cooled engine that said no thanks to valves. It had a piston, a connecting rod, and a flywheel. That's it. Now, if you've ever tried to explain a worm gear to your neighbor who still thinks horsepower means how many goats it can tow, good luck. This design meant you could ride longer without the thing chewing through parts like Bob chews through my Wi-Fi. The gearbox? Just 2 speeds, low and hang on. It had a hand-operated clutch with a 5-gear engagement lever mounted on the gas tank, which I think is adorable. It's like shifting gears while patting your motorcycle's belly for good luck. As for suspension, well, front forks had a horizontal spring which made them look like they borrowed parts from a trampoline. The rear suspension, there wasn't any, unless you count the springs under your butt, which coincidentally is how I handle most family dinners. Just smile and bounce. Brakes? You've got one. It's on the back. A foot-operated friction strap around the rear rim. The front brake? Roughly 88 kilograms. That's less than your average couch potato after Thanksgiving. It topped out at about 35 to 40 miles per hour, 55 to 64 kilometers per hour, and sipped fuel at around 75 miles per gallon. That's about 3.1 liters per 100 kilometers. There was even a 7-quart auxiliary tank, giving it a range of over 350 kilometers, which, let's be honest, is farther than most folks walk in a year unless there's free beer at the finish line. That was left out, probably because the designers thought if you're brave enough to ride this thing, you're brave enough to stop it with your shoes. Wheels were 26 inches in diameter with 36 spokes and balloonish tires, which gave you that nice 1920s, I'll just roll over anything vibe. The wheelbase was 54 inches, that's 4 feet 6 inches, and the whole bike weighed around 195 pounds. By 1921, the engine size grew to 268 to 269 cubic centimeters to deal with the extra weight, probably from all the medals it deserved for surviving trench duty. Because yes, the US Army used these during the war as courier bikes. They were like the Uber Eats of the battlefield, but instead of burritos, they delivered battle plans. And people loved these bikes. They were light, cheap, and didn't burst into flames, unless you insulted them directly. In 1917, George Austin, a 220-pound legend on wheels, rode 542 miles, 872 kilometers, in 24 hours. That's right, a 100-kilo man, no protein shakes, no padded shorts, just guts and gears. Then in 1918, a guy named Bergstrom said, "Nice try," and rode 791 miles, 1,286 kilometers. But the crown went to Short, who soon after smashed it again with a wild 842 miles, 1,367 kilometers, in a single day. And all of them did it without hashtags, Strava accounts, or a single motivational podcast screaming, "Crush your limits." After the war, Cleveland upgraded to bigger machines, moving on to fancy 4 cylinders by 1925. But the A2 stuck around until the early 1920s, waving goodbye as the world moved toward fancier toys with more buttons to break. Back in 1915 to 1923, this thing rolled off the line for about $150. That's around $2,500 to $3,000 today, which, frankly, is less than what my neighbor Gary spent building a backyard flight simulator out of an old bathtub, 2 fans, and a TV that only shows weather radar. At auction, these things now go for real money. A beautifully preserved 1923 A2 Deluxe sold at Mecum, Las Vegas in 2024 for $19,800. Another 1917 example fetched around $11,500 back in 2019. And one battlefield survivor found near Paris was restored and valued between $17,000 and $19,000 in 2023. But here's where I want to give the A2 a tip of the helmet. It wasn't flashy, it wasn't trying to win any beauty contests, but it did what it was meant to do: start, go, and stop occasionally. And for its time, that was enough to carry messages across war zones and carve out a legacy on postage stamps. Like a good neighbor. But not Bob. Never Bob. Yeah, in 2006, the US Postal Service even honored it with its own stamp. Try doing that, Segway. So, while it didn't promise the moon or a Bluetooth-enabled seat warmer, the Cleveland A2 was a hero of minimalism. I liked most that it just worked. Simple, reliable. See you in the next one, folks. And remember, if your neighbor says he can build a Cleveland A2 from scratch, hand him a wrench and a camera. We'll go viral together.